Yep. This is to our Thanksgiving special.
Why not?
Shout out to all of our authors from 2020. Cheers to you.
Hey, what are we going to talk about, Mike? We're going to talk about favorite shows, favorite books.
Let's talk about just some of our highlights. Every author this year has been a highlight, but
oh my gosh,
we're just going to kind of go around robin here, and each of us is going to throw up a title, and we'll just kind of do a little review. This is certainly not one over another. This isn't sales. This is not based on anything other than just random thought, which is what we're excellent at.
Random or thought?
Yeah, random, not so much thought. Random musings.
Random something. So
can I go first? Can I go first?
Yeah. So Mr. Albanese, why don't you go first?
Hey, so anybody that knows me kind of a geek. I like fantasy and sci-fi books, but I love thrillers as well. Right. Hence we're doing the show.
Yeah.
But James Rollins,
he
hits all of that. The Last Odyssey. I loved this book. I think James Rollins is awesome also, but this is his 15th Sigma Force book. And if you've never read a Sigma Force, it's kind of a cross between Indiana Jones and James Bond. It's kind of, I heard someone write it that way. I was like, you know what? Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's about a team of operatives working for DARPA who are not only trained military, but also have like advanced degrees in numerous subjects. So like they're geeks who know how to shoot, which is kind of cool. And in this book, the adventure starts in Greenland. They find this ancient ship buried in an iceberg. And then on this ancient ship are all these crazy medieval weapons of war from the Bronze Age.
Ooh.
But they're like futuristic. And they're inside the ship. There's also this clockwork gold map with an ancient silver astrolabe. And when it's activated, the astrolabe shows the voyage of Odysseus, hence the title.
Nice.
His ship leaving Troy. And hidden on the map are dangers beyond compare, and leaves a fiery trail that leads to the Greek hell, Hades, or Tartarus.
Right.
And when word spreads of the discovery of that ship, the team's attacked. But so here's James Rollins. We interviewed him earlier this year. Here's James Rollins giving us a 30,000-foot view of the Last Odyssey.
Sigma Force is a group of former Special Forces soldiers. They've been drummed out of the service for various reasons, but because of special aptitude or skill or talent or IQ, they're secretly recruited by DARPA, the Defense Department's Research and Development Agency. And they're retrained in different scientific disciplines to go out there and protect against various threats. So, as I said, they're basically scientists with guns.
Right.
Yeah.
My personal aspirations at some point.
All of ours.
Yes.
So in this book, it starts out with the discovery of a medieval ship buried about a half a mile under the Greenland ice. The ice is melting, a meltwater chamber opens up. A pair of scientists discover these remains. They call in a team to investigate it. They discover the hold has some wondrous and horrific contents dating back to the Bronze Age. They discover a gold atlas with a silver astrolabe embedded into it. They discover, because it's signed, that it seems to have been designed by these Muslim inventors. And it seems to point towards the location of Hades or Tartarus, the Greek version of hell. And word spreads that they found this discovery, and that team is attacked, and mayhem ensues, and Sigma Force is called in to find out what was discovered, what's in that hold, and how come this is a world threat.
One of the things I like about James Rollins is that he got my 21-year-old son into reading thrillers because he's fascinated by mythology, and I was able to convince him to read that, and now he's a James Rollins fanatic.
Nice. Yeah,
I just froze. I lost my internet. Oh my gosh. Am I frozen?
We heard everything that was important.
Yeah.
Did it come out okay?
Yeah.
We'll get that in edits. Don't worry about it.
But you know what's so cool about this? I was reading reviews, and someone actually said it really good. They said James Rollins, well, actually, no, what he said. James Rollins said he wanted to send Sigma Force to hell. It's exactly what he did in his story, and people are going to love it because at the end it just kicks up into action and thriller. If you haven't read it, you got to read it. And you haven't, James Rollins, he writes some of the best stuff out there.
And all my favorite stuff is he's got it wrapped up. He's got the technology, he's got the science, and he's got the thriller and the run and gun stuff all wrapped up into a huge tome. So one of my favorites for sure.
Yep. Check. That's it.
Yep. All right.
A lot of people wanted to send me to hell, but
some do.
You're here or there. So one of my favorite books is no surprise from my favorite current author. I love you all, but you guys know it's Mark Greaney with one minute out.
Mm-hmm.
This was a really kick-ass book because he took Court Gentry, the gray man violator, and he put him in first person. And it was phenomenal execution. Everything that Court displayed, mentally, and just like his inner dialogue matched exactly what I expected him to sound like. And that was kind of thrilling because that's tough to do. You write third person for 8 books and you throw in first person, and it was awesome. But the other aspect of it was it covered human trafficking, which is a tremendous villain to have in a book, because in the real world, the bad guys don't always get punished and all kinds of people are affected by human trafficking. Yeah. And Mark took it on fictionally and got to slay a few of the dragons. And here's what he had to say about how human trafficking became the focal point of the book.
I wanted to see the gray man do something that he thought was wrong, like to feel like he screwed up. And the whole book is his journey to fix his mistake. And so I was like, let's put him on some sort of righteous mission, or some mission he feels is righteous, but it's from something long in the past. And that's how this book opens. There's a Serbian war criminal that Court's going to assassinate for things that he did 30 years ago. And in the process of that, he uncovers, not only does he uncover these human trafficking victims, but he makes their terrible situation worse by him arriving and like causing all this mayhem. He knows it's just there's gonna be fallout on these women for what he did, and so it's just part of his personal crusade. So really, the human trafficking, it just sort of came to me as like that's a subject matter that obviously is massive. I mean, it's the third largest criminal enterprise in the world. People talk about it like they talk about drugs or weapons or counterfeiting and stuff like that. You don't hear as much about it. I mean, when you do, it's usually in the context of human smuggling. Like bringing people over from Syria and stuff like that. But as I started to do the research on it, it was, my initial idea, and I started doing research on it, and it was so much more vast than I could have imagined, so much more brutal and cruel than I could have imagined. So as a writer, that really fans your flames to, like, you want to talk about something when you're like, holy moly, I didn't know this. Does everybody else know this?
No kidding.
And then the book becomes very passionate to you, because you're like, oh my gosh, this is something that, I've read in this dry study on human trafficking in the Balkans in, the 2000s or something. And it's like, I'd like to put this into a narrative that, will get more readers.
You guys have no
Gray Man, the Gray Man series itself, definitely my favorite series of all the guys. I'm sorry for the rest of you authors, but it's true, and I've said that many times. So this was yet another look in from a different direction. So for me, it was really invigorating to see a different viewpoint. Now we're inside the head of my favorite protagonist. So for me,
switching up to first person after writing third person is it's difficult to do, man. And he's
nailing it.
Nailing it. I slayed it. I mean, it's Mark Greaney, and he writes so damn good. I hate him because I want to write good too.
We love to hate him.
But we love you though, dude. Come on.
Speaking of loving people, my first choice for this year was Brad Meltzer's The Lincoln Conspiracy. Yes. I am definitely a huge fan of biographical work, autobiographies as well. And I could not believe that this was a real event based on a real event. It read bigger than any thriller of the year for me, in terms of like, holy crap, are you serious? That actually happened. So this is the journey of Lincoln and the assassination plot on his way to his inauguration. And
the first one.
Yeah.
And
it's mind-boggling the balls or the bravado of the opposing force to think that they could actually pull it off, and to the point that they almost did, and this would have changed probably the course of our history. This reads like no one would come up with a storyline like this if it was just purely fiction. This was bigger than anything in terms of just a pure made-up story. So, and this is a good spot for us to hear from Brad Meltzer himself on how he came about with the idea to write the true story of the Lincoln conspiracy.
If that's not the Matrix, I don't know what it is, right? If I told you that in real life, you'd never believe it. But we happen to know the ending of the story. And Lincoln is just filled over and over. You know, George Washington, as you said, used the word providence, whether it's God, whether you believe it's fate, whatever you believe, you know, how the universe works. The story for Lincoln and Lincoln conspiracy is filled with those moments where you just feel like someone is writing this divine tale. You know, there's the bad guys in the book, right? There's a group called the Knights of the Golden Circle. There's a secret society. The secret society is going to kill them. And it's an offshoot of these guys, the Knights of the Golden Circle. And one of the things that I love in the book is we talk about this scene where they're all deciding who's going to be the killer, who's going to actually pull the trigger and kill Abraham Lincoln. And in this dark room, they all draw straws, right? So each one of us picks out from the thing. We have to each pick our straw, and whoever gets the short one is going to be, you know, I'm obviously making it a little quicker than what it is in the book. But you see them, you know, actually draw them out. But the thing that's great in the end is they're like, we don't want to tell, you can't tell anyone who is the one that got the short straw, because they don't want anyone to know, in case you're captured, in case we get busted, no one can know who the killer is, so they can't stop them. So none of us know, out of the four of us here, who got the short straw. And the great moment, of course, is when you later find out that there wasn't just one short straw, but there were like 6, 7, 8 of them. And they were so worried you might back out that there were going to be 8 different killers at the same time. You're like, holy cow, this could all go sideways at any moment if it's not stopped in just the right way. And those moments are, you know, again, it's the thing that if I put it in a thriller, you'd never believe it. You'd roll your eyes and say that's silly coincidence that it goes sideways. But when I tell you it's Abraham Lincoln and it's a real story, and by the way, you know who else was in the Knights of the Golden Circle later? They had this member named John Wilkes Booth. And you're like, what the hell is going on here? You just can't help but go like, my God, this really happened. And that's, you know, the thriller writer in me loves the pace of the story and loves the consequence of the story. But this story, as a nonfiction historical book, does things I could never do in a thriller.
You know, they tried to kill Lincoln not once, but twice. Nearly did it right before his inauguration, 1861. I mean, I thought I was a student of history. There's so much I just don't know about.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say.
I felt like an infant when I read.
I've read everything. I thought I'd read everything about Lincoln. Team of Rivals, you know, being one of the more recent ones. But my dad had the Carl Sandburg books on Lincoln, and I read them growing up. And I thought, you know,
but how do we not even hear about that in school?
Yeah,
like,
I don't know.
It's not even brought up.
No, listen, I'm a Civil War history buff, and I was like, what? This is silly. And then I was like, this shit's cool.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Albanese, we're on to
go again.
Passage number 2. Let's see what you got, brother.
Again, with my geeky nerd stuff, Joe Rosenberg, the Jerusalem Assassin. I have read every single one of Joe Rosenberg's stories, and even when this first one came out, and he had me hooked on the first book. And then his Marcus Riker series is awesome. This is the 3rd installment in his latest series. And true to form, Jerusalem Assassin is another page turner with the action shifting into high speed toward the end. But I love the historical and current events relating to the Middle East that are in this. It feels like a history story, and it's almost as if like events are taking place today. And the guy's he's so crazy and weird where he's able to fit in what happens in his stories, and then like a couple months later it happens. It's actually pretty cool. He's done it several times. But what I loved about our interview with Joel is how he talked about his writing and his character creation and how it's evolved over the years, and how he's wanted to use a different angle than some of the other authors have been using. So take a listen.
Well, one thing is, how long can you really get away at this stage with having a New York Times foreign correspondent be your main character? Like, if you're center right politically, that's going to last about another 9 seconds. It's probably already over, right? I mean, it's just, but also I mean, I thought it was interesting because one of the things I liked about doing that series, and again, I've just had the freedom, and maybe I've been wrong commercially, but artistically, that sounds weird. I'm not an artiste. Anyway, in terms of wanting to write novels, okay, let's just be honest. Having the freedom to write a 3-part series, a trilogy on a New York Times foreign correspondent that goes to interview the head of ISIS, right? I was interested in that because, in many ways, foreign correspondents are intelligence operatives. They are gathering source material. They're just doing it openly rather than clandestinely, and their reports are read by every leader in the world. If you're working for the New York Times, you're working for the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, The Economist, BBC, whatever, your material that you gather is not going to be in some dusty, inbox somewhere in the Central Intelligence Agency or MI6. You're on the front page of the world's leading newspapers or television programs, which means many more people have access to the intelligence that you're gathering. That's what I found interesting. And your lifespan, your life expectancy can be higher in theory, right? Because the terrorists need you to live in order to write their take, right? They want to say what they want to say, and they want you to write it. And that's a dangerous game. And obviously a lot of journalists don't make it.
Yeah.
But they're incredibly brave, and they're just risk analysis calculation is just completely flipped on its head from a clandestine officer. So I thought it was actually very interesting. And one of the things that was fun about that, I'll just say, is that King Abdullah read that series.
That's awesome.
Wow.
And it was a series about ISIS trying to assassinate him and his family, and he was a named character, and then blow up his palace and take over his kingdom. And it was all based on this New York Times reporter who goes to interview the head of ISIS and gets the interview. Now, but you're right, at some point, a Wall Street strategist and a New York Times foreign correspondent do not have the skill sets to sustain, in my view, more than 3 or 4 or 5 books. Like, there's only so many times that's plausible. And, I would say that my only main difference, so I wanted the skill set, there's no question. I needed that set of skill sets, but I wanted to create a character actually different from Mitch Rapp or James Bond or, Jack Reacher or anything, certainly, or Scott Harvath. I didn't want him to be an assassin. Not because I'm morally opposed, necessarily, but I didn't want him to be proactive hunting people. I wanted him to be pulled into this thing sort of against his will, that he was sort of has these skill sets, but he doesn't want to use it anymore. He wants to have a more normal life because some things have shattered in his life, and he fears that he spent more of his life, his career, protecting his country and its leaders than the people closest to him. So the tragedy pulls him out of the game, and then events pull him back in. And that's the sort of moral wrestlings and challenges that I wanted to use to set up Marcus Riker. And of course, I didn't want to create the same characters that my friends and colleagues are writing so brilliantly. So I needed a different angle into this.
Right.
Yeah, one of the things about Joel is, he runs in some pretty extraordinary circles. Some of the people he's met in the Middle East and our government, and it brings an authenticity to his writing that not everyone can match.
Yeah, and this is the guy you need to get the Powerball numbers from, because he is, in fact, the modern day Nostradamus. Every time you read his book, you're like, wait a minute, I bet this is going to show up on the news this week. And sure enough, it does.
Do you guys remember during the interview, I thought it was hilarious how he met with King Abdullah of Jordan, and he handed him the book, and then he was like, yes, I've read all these. He goes, I hand them to my staffers, and I go, you didn't make it. Here, read it.
That was one of the best. That was a great anecdote. Well, guys, one of the real pleasures of this show is I've discovered a lot of authors that I would not have discovered if it weren't for this show. And if it weren't for people like David Brown saying, hey, have you read this book, and sending us a book. And I love that surprise of a new author. It's like opening Christmas present you didn't know you were going to get. And one of those Christmas presents came in the form of Mindy.
Yeah, exactly.
Strike Me Down. I found myself not only loving this book, but then I went back to Leave No Trace and some of her earlier books. And she's just a tremendous writer. And obviously one of our most favorite interviews. She's just about human joy in a little 5'3" package or whatever she is.
She'd kick your ass.
Yeah, she'll kick your ass because she's learned how to kickbox. But luckily, her husband was her sparring partner, and none of us. We asked Mindy a couple questions. We asked her how she made a thriller out of the exciting world of accounting. And then we also asked her how she develops the unique voices of all the different characters, because she has extremely distinct voices between characters.
Yep.
Here's what she had to say.
Right. Let's just jump right into the secrets. I usually do tend to write one character, if not completely at a time. I focus on a character for a week or two, and really so I can immerse myself in their voice, their diction, how they would say things. I do always figure out how each character swears. Like, that's really important to me. Like,
that's interesting.
Because I think it says so much about a person. Like, what is your go-to curse? You know, like that tells me, it's just kind of a shortcut to that character's head. And so if I know how they swear, that's kind of my introduction to, okay, this is who you are, you know, and we're going to get to you.
I'm totally stealing that, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes, it really helps. So yeah, that's definitely one of the tricks that I use. And then, yeah, I do just kind of go back and look at the diction that I'm using in each section. And there's, times in editing where I'm like, no, that's Mindy. That's definitely not Nora. I need to pull that. I need to, even though I love this line, it's my line. It's not her line. So I'll really look for myself and pull out anything I can see that's me. And
so Sean, did you know when she gave that answer, I totally stole that idea of figuring out how your character curses, and then from that point you could figure out, who your character really is. I thought that was a fantastic idea, and I totally stole that shit.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, but probably one of the most unique lightning rounds we've had this entire 2020. It really showcases her really sharp wit and sharp intellect. And so that was really fun to see from somebody, like you said, Sean. You might not necessarily pulled it up on a shopping spree at Barnes and Noble. And so it's a beautiful and unique find for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, you just mentioned stealing stuff, and that's one of the other joys of this show is that we get little tips, whether where they are intended as tips or not. I feel like we're getting a master's degree in the craft.
Yeah. Listen, if you guys are I'm always taking notes down. When David Morrell says something, I'm like,
yeah.
I'm saying it. Go ahead.
On a stone tablet.
Amen.
Well, speaking of powerful voices, probably something that scared me and probably scared you guys the most this year was this book right here. There's a bit of a twist to this, is that you really don't see his protagonist as much and as often as you normally see in a typical Vince Flynn book. Really, we had some other characters really driving a lot of the storyline. It certainly doesn't take away from his normal process, but this talks about something that's very close to current American society, and that what would happen if something were to go down like he described in the book. So let's hear from him himself about what he learned in his research and what scared him and what should scare you. So really the power grid is, it's a more serious issue than I think most people really realize. And I think your book kind of highlighted some of that this is truly up there with, almost like a nuclear kind of scenario. What were some of the more shocking or surprising discoveries you had when you were doing research for the book?
It was actually, it was super interesting and much more terrifying than I thought. I just come off writing, strangely, a book about a coronavirus, which was really terrifying when I researched it and became more so. But this was surprising. First of all, how easy it would be in many ways. A lot of reports have been done on this by Congress and other consultants, and that you'd only have to take out about 9 substations, major ones, to take the entire grid down.
And Kyle, what's blocking those? What's blocking those substations? Is there an army guarding those substations?
No, chain link fence. And a lot of them are kind of in the middle of nowhere, and honestly, a lot of them are kind of not very easily replaced. They most of those transformers are made in foreign countries. They're huge. Some of them literally were brought in on trains that the tracks don't exist anymore. There'd be no way to even bring them in. So,
Lord,
kind of interesting, and interesting that they've done some kind of war gamed it a little bit and decided that if the power stayed out for a year, this is Congress, that about 90% of the population would die. So 300 million people, roughly. And when you play it out in your head, and I spent a year doing that, that seems like a reasonable estimate. In fact, when I first did it, it was summer. The setting was summer. You see now it's Christmas.
Right.
And I had to change it because no matter how I gamed it, no matter what Mitch Rapp did, everybody dies if it happens in the summer. There's just nothing that can be done. So I switched it to winter, and it softened it a little bit.
I'm terrified.
What's crazy to see? What's crazy to see in that is to see Mitch Rapp lose.
Yeah.
And then how does he come back from it? I love those type of stories where everything goes to shit, the power goes out, and people are left to survive. And do they pull together as a community, as a society, or does shit go crazy? And then how do we put it all back together?
Yeah.
I had trouble sleeping a couple nights subconsciously. I didn't realize that's why, but I really did start to sort of think of how easy that doomsday scenario could come to pass.
Mm.
And has the government done anything to rectify that?
Well, there was stuff in the news like a week after the book came out that the Congress was actually going through some of the budgetary stuff. So you're like, well, who came first, that meeting, or did Mitch create that meeting?
Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So my next book, you can't be into the thriller genre without reading this guy, Brad Thor.
That's it.
I mean, Brad Thor, like everyone else, I fell in love with reading Brad Thor's stories, with reading Lions of Lucerne.
Yeah.
But the last 2 books that he's written, Backlash and Near Dark, he's shown himself. I mean, they've just literally blown me away. But to see in this book, to see Harvath broken as a man, was shocking. But then also to see him pull it back together was also, it's like fulfilling, satisfying as a reader. But as Brad Thor always does, Scott Harvath doesn't do it alone. He's got a team of folks, unique in all their abilities, and there's lots of fan favorites like the Troll, but he always makes sure he has a female companion for Harvath to get through his stuff, and it's not some like cheesy one-off like typical female character. I mean, it's a real person. And so we asked Scott, we asked Brad how he comes together with writing these strong and believable characters, and here's what he said. Project. What do you do to make sure that your female characters not only come across as authentic, but actually feel authentic?
Well, so 2 things. I am writing for a very small audience in my mind when I write female characters. I am surrounded by incredible women. So whether that's my wife, my agent, my editor, or my daughter, I have a son and a daughter. So I want that respect from the women in my life. I want to write characters that my daughter can look up to and want to be like. And the adult female friends and colleagues I have will look at me and say, that was solid. That was really good. You treated them well. I got interviewed once. My VP for my company is a brilliant woman. So like I said, I'm surrounded by all these brilliant women. And I was speaking like an author once when I got asked this question. And I was trying to convey, right away, I wanted to say they are not window dressing, because that's really important for me. These are strong, very capable female characters. And I was in an interview once, and I saw my VP, Yvonne, just kind of put her hand over her face when I said they are absolutely critical, because Harvath can't get to the climax without a solid woman in his life. And she just went like, oh.
Look at that,
and I'm
edits.
like, what?
Wrong choice of words, Brad.
I mean, I was using it in the, you have the climax and the denouement,
Yeah.
and I was trying to, and so it was poor phrasing on me. Had I made that statement today, I'd probably be, hung out to dry, taken to the guillotine. But it was meant in all sincerity that the female characters are really, really important to me. I have a lot of female readers, and I don't phone anything in. Any character worth putting in the book is worth developing, worth exploring. They are a hero in their own personal story. They have a reason they do everything they do. They have their ups, their downs. They have bad things that have happened to them. One of the greatest things that I learned about characters when I was at University of Southern California studying creative writing and film and TV production was we did this whole breakdown of that movie with Dustin Hoffman and so Kramer versus Kramer.
Yeah.
And Meryl Streep. So yeah, it wasn't Diane Keaton. It was Meryl Streep, right? Meryl Streep and Dustin Hoffman.
I think so, yeah.
So you had these two. So the teacher said, who's the bad guy? Who's the good guy? And they said that was an example of really great character development where you found appealing things in both of them and also things that you didn't like in both of them. So that for me is important. The female characters have to be really, really solid because I want my daughter to love them. I want my female readers to love them. But I also want to be able to turn to the women in my life who I really respect and have them say to me, you rendered that character very, very well. Well done.
Yeah. And two, if you've read a number of his books, from Lions of Lucerne all the way up through Near Dark, I don't think you'll see an author shine as much as him in terms of the actual writing process and the changes the market that maybe he hasn't followed, but actually driven in terms of what the sentence structures look like. How do the chapters pace? All these sorts of things. And typically some of these other guys that we've read who have 20 plus books, the storylines kind of, flow kind of evenly, but with Brad, you really see a change in the craft over time. And so for me, that's pretty fulfilling to see somebody trying to become better, even they've had so much tremendous success in the past.
Yeah, that was humbling, our discussion with him. And you could see that his ambition is to be better every time out. And it's not idle talk. I mean, and you know what? The last 3 books, I felt like were a raising of the bar, then a raising of the bar, then a raising of the bar.
How the hell do you do that?
I don't know. I mean, I love how he painted Scott into a really tough corner of this book, and Scott got out of it in a very believable fashion. And in an unbelievable sort of genre, it really rang true. And like Chris said, the supporting characters are key. Right. And his women are definitely not Bond girls. They're
kickers,
every bit.
man.
I mean, they're equals to the Harvath character, and that's outstanding.
So with Near Dark, like we said, it's some of Brad's best writing. But like I said in our interview with him, there's no fat in this story. I mean, it's so clean. But the cool thing is at the end of it almost is like, he knows exactly what he's writing, and he does, but he's a pantser. Like he doesn't know really what the story is going to end up. But so at the end of our interview, Brad said he had no idea what the next Harvath story was going to be. But I got to tell you, man, even though he doesn't know what it is, I'm already excited about it.
Yeah.
Like I want to read that damn thing.
Yeah, true.
What did he say? He said Caddyshack meets Die Hard.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We're in. I'm in.
I'll buy it.
Yeah.
Well, the last author I want to talk about, or the last book I want to talk about specifically was a real thrill for me. In 1987, I picked up this author's first book, and I've read every single one when it came out, not after the fact, not, you know, off the bargain bookship. I've read them all when they came out, and I've loved every single one of his books. And that's seldom true. I mean, there's usually an author I could pick a book that I've loved every book of this guy. And he's made kind of a transition in the last couple of years where he took his secondary character and made him kind of a co-primary character. And you guys know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm about Robert CRAIS. And this is a Joe Pike novel, which means Elvis is still in it, just like Joe's in all the Elvis novels. And that's an important thing. But we have noticed that Pike has stepped out of Elvis's shadow, and much to everyone's joy, because Joe Pike is just a flat badass character.
He is.
But we asked Robert, you know, who does he like writing more, Elvis or Joe, or does he like writing one of them more than the other?
Let's stay on topic with Pike. And so The Watchmen, which came out in 2007, it was the first to feature Pike to feature Joe as a title role. Now that you've written both of them for so long, so it's like 13 years back and forth, is there a point of view that you prefer or that excites you more? Is it Elvis or is it Joe?
No, it really depends on the story. I love writing both the guys. They both give me as the writer a different experience. With Elvis Cole, I guess you'd have to say, you know, with Elvis Cole, I get I get to use color. I get to use more emotion because Elvis will certainly is open. First of all, Elvis is talking directly to the reader, right? The Elvis Cole sections of the books are still mostly first person.
Right.
Joe is very internalized, so he's never first person. He's always third person, and Joe's very contained. That requires me to be in a different headspace, but I love being in that headspace. And so they are like having two completely different characters, except their lives are intertwined. I mean, I could certainly write two different series here. I could write the Elvis Cole books and just have Elvis Cole in them, and have Joe books and just have Joe in them. But in my reality, their lives are intertwined. They're not yin and yang, but I really don't have a sense of what I would do with one of those characters and not the other. So if we're talking about Joe, I'll tell you this, going back as far as The Monkey's Raincoat. You know, first of all, I'm an outliner, so I like to figure out at least most of the things that are going to happen in a book before I actually write the book. So I did that with The Monkey's Raincoat, and I had this outline all worked out and all my little note cards and the junk you do. But remember, that was book one. I did not foresee any of this would happen. I didn't realize there would be 22 of these things and you know, all the good things that have happened. I was trying to write one book that wasn't embarrassing. That's just please.
That's where I'm at.
So I had this story figured out, and it at the end, you know, it's there's no spoilers here. The book's been around since 1987. Right. There's a big shootout at the end where they save the little boy, and in my outline, and as I wrote leading up to that moment, I was going to kill Joe Pike.
Oh,
yeah, I had it worked out. And believe it was great. It was great. I just knew, you know, I knew I was writing. You know, this is a great character. Joe's great. Look, they're the best. They're best friends. And when I get to that scene where Joe is suddenly just, you know, it's like out of the blue. Even Joe Pike didn't see it coming. He was just going to get shot and be killed. I just was sitting there thinking, man, readers are just going to be blubbering and crying, you know, and oh my God, you know, big sad. It was going to be this wonderful moment. When I got there, when I actually got to that moment, writing the scene, I couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
You know what social media would have done to you?
Yeah, back then.
This was 1986. There was no social media.
Exactly.
but I couldn't do it. I'd fallen in love with him. Thank God.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You almost killed your career, not
My
just a
career.
character.
Yeah. Joe wouldn't have been the only thing who died.
Yeah, and
Dude,
congratulations.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Chris.
Go ahead.
This past week we gotten word that he had won the Decade Award for Best Novel, and was it a surprise? No, but can you imagine the number of titles and the number of New York Times bestsellers that he beat out for that particular award is mind-boggling. So anyone who hasn't read his books, please, I mean, you're missing out. If you've read everybody else's, but not the one that won the Decade Award, you're really missing out.
You know, it's crazy, Sean. I had actually never read Bob CRAIS' books before, and then you put me onto him, and I was like, "Woo! What have I been doing? Like, fucking idiot!" So I went out and I bought just about every single one, and I devoured them. And Elvis Cole and Joe Pike are some of the best, if not the best, characters I've ever read, and hopefully one day I can write as good as him.
He's just got such a distinctly powerful voice in that genre. I mean, like, awesome. You know, I feel like I've met Elvis. I feel like I've met Joe. Not that I've read him, that I've met him. And it was also, as you guys will agree with this, it was he himself was just an absolute pleasure to speak with. And he's exactly who you'd hoped he'd be after reading these books.
Yeah.
I think there was someone who made a comment on our interview with him, and it was kind of like, you guys did a great interview, and it was kind of fanboyish, though. You might want to lay off. I'm like, it was fanboyish, because
they're all fanboyish.
Sorry, the guy's awesome. I was into it.
I saw that today, and I will own that all day long. I'm not ashamed to say I'm unabashedly a fan of the guy. I mean, you know, I feel like we still ask him some pretty good questions, but I'm not shy about it. I'm not shy. I mean, we're in this because we're passionate about writers and their work. And I don't think you can really get to the heart of what makes somebody a great author or what makes something a good book if your heart's not in it, and if you don't have passion in it, and if that is by definition a fan. And so I'm right. Cheers to fanboys out there.
Yeah.
And fangirls.
I will drink to that.
Yeah. Well, you know, talking about being fanboy.
Get that sip in. Get that sip in.
Get that frog out of my throat. No, talking about fanboy. We even had the opportunity to meet a debut author this past year, who arguably has the best, or maybe the co-best debuts of 2020, and probably for a very long time. You might know him as Chris Hauty in Deep State. And this book really turned things upside down for me, because the writing itself was very distinct and different than anybody else I had read this, for probably the past 5 or 10 years. But the voice that he came out with this female protagonist was something so unique that I was one of those books that you just didn't put down, because you really wanted to see what was happening. You've got a female boxer who's kicking ass throughout this entire, thing. But really, it was the way he wrote. He was giving a heads up on what was going to happen 10 years that was so in the future for this character in chapter 3 or chapter 5 or chapter 6. But the way he did it, it didn't seem odd that it was there. It just seemed like it belonged. Whereas if I had tried to write that, it would have looked like, dude, did you just have a brain fart and put something in the wrong chapter? So Chris Hauty, with a long history in Hollywood writing scripts, turns to novel writing, which we're widely anticipating Sean Cameron's future for the same reason, is that this book, Deep State, really turned the industry, I think, upside down in terms of what could be done in the same genre we've been reading for years. So this is what Chris has to say about his career. So
there is no autonomy in the film world. And you can say that about just about anyone in the film world. I don't care how big or how much clout or how much they get paid or their resume. Everyone has someone to answer to and determine almost all of them the creative choices they make as artists. Having to go hat in hand or get approvals or you know, what do they call when they review the movies? The customers review the movies, the scorecards. I mean, it's
Rotten
all,
Tomatoes.
yeah, it's all like you're just constantly bombarded with compromise.
Mm-hmm.
There, at least in my very brief experience as a fiction writer, no one's asked me to compromise anything. I mean, not once. It's fantastic. I don't think people in Hollywood quite realize it. I think they look down on it probably because the movies seem more glamorous and you reach more people. But just in terms of that autonomy as an artist, as a writer, is incomparable.
Freedom.
Yeah. And the second thing I would say is the collegial nature of other authors, the community of authors that, you know, again, this is all new. I'm not speaking like a pro. I've only been at this a very short time. So my opinion is based on a limited bandwidth of experience. But, you know, I've developed better and more friendships with authors in the last year and a half than I did in 35 years in Hollywood with other screenwriters.
That's so interesting.
And that's really tremendous. I mean,
so guys, when you know, we always talk about the books that we read, and we'll usually wait till the end to send each other messages like, yeah, this book was awesome. You know, this is a cool part. When I was reading Deep State, it was like every chapter I was sending you guys and sending messages like, dude, did you read this? Like, unbelievable. It was so cool. And Mike, you're right. He has such a distinct voice. You could pick up, I'm pretty sure, any Chris Hauty book and his future books and know that this is a Chris Hauty book.
Yeah.
His voice is so distinct and so different from it. It was very refreshing to read it. And it was such an awesome book.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, you know, you can see the strength of his screenwriting and what it brought to his novels, because kind of like what you said about Brad Thor, there's not a lot of fat, because when you write a screenplay, you can't have a word that doesn't matter. And I really think that translated into his first attempt at a novel. It just like, it propelled you like few books do. I mean, you know, the stereotype is couldn't put it down, lost sleep,
right.
You know, book filled. I mean, they're stereotypes because they're true. And sometimes, and that book was absolutely that book. I mean, that kind of book. I just could not, I couldn't find a place where, you know, I could go set it down and go make a sandwich. I mean, you know, I'm reading it, you know, you just put mayonnaise on your peanut butter sandwich. Oh, well,
who cares? Eat it.
Well, you know, and almost as crazy as the twist at the end of this novel was the fact that the fan base was holding back that twist from future readers. I was waiting for somebody to screw up and give out the golden, you know, ticket to everybody before they got the book. But time and again, we saw people not bringing it, you know, not saying it or not revealing it so that other people would find. But yeah, the twist at the end was something I've never I don't recall ever reading in a novel that caught me so off guard.
Seen him in, like, you know, Kaiser Soze moment in, you know, or the Sixth Sense moment. And
right.
Yeah, you see those in movies a lot more than you see them in books. Usually those kind of things telegraph themselves in books, and that one, a lot of that just did not.
Yeah. Well, so that's going to be our Thanksgiving reveal for some of our favorite. Of course, this was not an all-inclusive list. I mean, behind us are other authors that came out with books this year that we were just fascinated by. Special shout out to Don Bentley. We didn't mention him in the same breath as Chris Hauty in Deep State, but certainly he deserves to be there as well. So this was just kind of a gloss view of everybody that we've had the pleasure of meeting. And I think,
oh my gosh, maybe
the one common denominator out of everything that we've gone over this past year is that all these authors are genuinely nice people who very giving of their time, and that every one of them deserves.
Except that one bastard.
Oh my God. And you know who you are.
You know who you are.
You know. No, but Mike, I mean, you're completely right, man. We have been honored and blessed, and it's still like, it's ridiculous that people want to talk to us about their books and spend an hour with us, go through the lightning round. But we have interviewed some amazing, actually, they've all been amazing authors, and we've read all of their books. And it's been such an honor to do it.
Yeah, for
Blessed.
sure. All right.
So, guys, before we go, though, I want to hear. So, Chris, let's start with you since we start with you at the beginning. What are you looking forward to coming up? It's not out.
Oh my
yet.
gosh. Let me look over here real quick. There's so many. All right, this one. I'll grab this one. Folks haven't gotten it yet. Comes out January 5th. It's Brad Taylor. Brad Taylor writes some of the best shit out there. American Trader. I love it. If you guys haven't seen the trailer, crew reviews, Nullbone Studios, we made it for Brad. So just saying, the title reveal, not the trailer, but he's been there, done that. He is the shit. He's the real thing. So Brad Taylor, American Trader, dude. Can't wait to talk to you about this one. I mean, there's so many other ones. Like, should I talk about more?
Yeah, no. Take them more, whatever.
No.
So we finished with Chris Hauty's Deep State.
Yeah.
Savage Road. Another one that Nullbone Studios also did for his title reveal. Also comes out January 5th. Go figure, right? These two books. Like, which one do you buy?
The ending of that, where that one thing happens and then the other thing happens.
So seriously, let me
something else.
Let me just read you. Let me read you the end. No, I'm not going to read you the end. Awesome.
That's the end of our program.
David Brown just had a heart attack somewhere.
I don't know if you guys want to talk about these coming out soon.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
So Good Neighbors by Sarah Lanigan and Things to Burn by Will Dean. These are the top of my to be read pile. Like, my to be read pile is ridiculously huge, but this is at the very top. I'm going to be devouring these in the next week or so. I can't wait.
I just read Sarah's book and it's phenomenal.
Yeah, the character development in that book is fantastic. I love it.
Don't say anything. Don't tell me.
What's that one thing?
Go ahead, say the one thing.
Well, a couple that I'm looking forward to. I always there you go. Sorry.
Don't do it.
I always look forward to Nick Petrie.
Yes.
Awesome writer.
We've talked about this. I think that Nick could be a best-selling literary novelist. Thank God he's in the thriller genre because he's turned out some terrific stuff.
Yeah.
But his gift for sentences, his gift for paragraphs, for chapters,
setting.
I cannot wait to talk to him about his next book.
Yeah.
That was another one you turned me on to with Nick Petrie's his last book.
I'm a pusher. If you really want to, at the bottom line, I'm a pusher. I push.
And if it wasn't good stuff, I'd be angry. But you pushed
exactly.
Stuff, so.
Yeah. So far, he's 100%.
I'm looking forward to.
Did you read this?
Not yet. That's on my top of my pile.
It's on my list. You read it, Mike. You read it already.
I read it. I won't say any more, but it's definitely worth the time. You'll find the story. It's kind of creeping. It kind of just creeps up on you. And you just get more and more sucked in as time goes on. And kind of a Chris Hauty like twist at the end. It will shock you. And cool. But it will tie all the loose ends together perfect.
So what is it? What is the twist?
Yeah, so we'll get that on our next episode.
Well, and of course, I'm definitely counting the days until the next Gray Man number 10 comes out. It's called Relentless, and that's kind of how I feel about The Wait. The Wait is relentless, and every day I think, I wonder how it's going to be until I get that. Greg Hurwitz, Orphan X book.
Oh, yeah.
Can't wait. I mean,
Brad Thor. We've got a lot of new titles.
Jack Carr.
2021. The coronavirus will be gone, and there'll be fantastic books to read.
Let's hope.
All right.
Let's hope. Cheers.
Cheers to all of our authors.
I'm thankful for you guys too,
and I'm thankful for my
Genuinely.
boys.
I'm thankful for me. Thank you.
All right.
As you should be.
Cheers.
For the full-length episodes of these amazing authors and our entire library of New York Times best-selling interviews, visit thecrewreviews.com or your favorite podcast streaming service.